health was really a lot better than ours today. You can just go back to 1960 and look at the health of people, and as far as obesity is the number one killer. The number one killer. It's a killer because it puts pressure on all your joints, which causes arthritis and inflammation, and puts pressure on your heart, which causes, which is the number one killer. Obesity also means that you're taking in the food that's being produced today. You're eating junk food, and junk food is full of pollutants. Sugar, refined sugar, and not just, I mean, it's chemicals, okay? So they didn't have chemicals, and then so, you know, I like to give long answers, so.
Can I say something?
Uh-huh.
I was just reading this last night. I was reading about Noah and the ark,
Mm-hmm.
and I was amazed about how old they were. Like, he died
Right.
like 600 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and one of his descendants was 777
Right.
years old.
Methuselah was 900.
Yeah. And it said that, you know, God took his spirit from man because we were wicked, and that
Mm-hmm.
we could only live, what, like 120
Right.
years?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I was just reading that and
Yeah.
brought that up because I was thinking the same thing.
But the reason why getting to that, the reason why they live so long is so you think about the earth and how pure it was. Like when Adam and Eve went out to pick a carrot, I can guarantee you that carrot was probably about 2 pounds. And it was just pristine. Why? I mean, no, but it's so, and it's just like anything else. The further away you get from the absolute, the more mixture you have in it, the less pure it is, and so it doesn't function the way it was supposed to, okay? So in the Garden of Eden, they were up close and personal with God. I could go off on a whole thing here just about even communicating with God. Even after they were kicked out of the garden, trust me, they didn't travel to the other side of the world. There was the Garden of Eden. They got kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and they probably moved right, and they pitched a tent right on the line of the Garden of Eden. Okay? And Cain and Abel, and they all occupied that land. And the further you traveled out, and the further the descendants, you know, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. So there's a saying, you can write this down. What one generation permits, the next generation does in excess. What one generation allows, the next generation does in excess. And that's just the nature of man. You know, why does God, and why do we, and why do your parents, and, you know, say, no, you can't do, and then you're like, well, it won't hurt. It's just one little thing. It's this, that, or the other. No. Because how you are, how I know how you're wired. If I say you can have one, then you're going to want two. And that's the biggest excuse in the book. Oh, one won't hurt, but it never stops at one, does it? Right. You know. And so you had compromise, more and more sin with more and more people and more generations, and the further they got away. See, Adam and Eve, listen, we don't know exactly when Cain killed Abel, okay? But they were still talking to God. like you read the Bible and you think, oh, this is the Bible. No, the Bible is record. Look at the conversation that Cain has with God. He didn't fear. He wasn't like, oh, who are you? Whoa, I hear this voice from heaven. No. God came down and said, where's your brother Abel? And he's like, he has it's so common for him to speak to God that he gets smart with him. I don't know where he is. Am I my brother's keeper? And he smarts off to God. And you read that whole conversation just goes on like a normal. God says, listen, man, you've done wrong. His blood's crying out to me from the ground. And he says, you're gonna be punished, and he has this whole conversation. And I'm just saying, we read it and we just think that's no, this is a man having a conversation with God. And then you have to ask yourself, when did that stop? When did that not become normal? How are they talking to God? And this is the whole other teaching on tongues. You heard some of it with the youth. I was talking to them about it. Tongues is traced all the way back to Genesis. And so, how was God speaking to them? Or you think he was speaking to them in English? Huh? So they moved. So one of Cain's fears was, and I asked this question, what was the first murder? What was the first murder in the Bible? Who committed the first murder? Huh? Wrong. Listen, this is why you have to read when you read the Bible, like you gotta wisdom is 5 questions deep. Wisdom is 5 questions deep. Y'all are reading the Bible, and you're not asking when you ask 5 questions, why, how. You're reading the Bible, reading words of a conversation, when the question might be is, why wasn't he afraid when God came and spoke to him and he was caught in a murder and he wasn't even afraid? If you murdered somebody, would you be afraid? You're afraid of the police. What if God showed up and just started like talking to you? Why was he so comfortable smarting off to God? Well, for one thing, we all are. We still do it today, and we don't have a fear of God. But he's just having a conversation. Later on in the Bible, you see where God shows up, an angel shows up, and people are like, whoa! I can't look at you, I can't talk to you, I'm paralyzed, I'm trembling, I'm in fear. And almost every time the angel has to come and say, fear not. Even Mother Mary, who had no reason to fear, chosen and favored by God, the angel of the Lord showed, fear not. Don't be afraid. So you have to ask yourself, why? Because they were in regular communication with God. They're like, oh yeah, that's my daddy's creator. That's my daddy's daddy. That's my grandpa. God was Cain and Abel's grandpa.
Google said it was Cain was the first human and the first murderer.
Google's wrong.
Yeah.
All right, read the conversation. Mr. Jordan's heard this before. Let's go to the conversation. Well, we're still talking about living long. I don't even know where it is. Where is it? It's in the Bible somewhere. Huh? All right, let me pull it up. Y'all got it? Genesis 4. I want everybody to close their eyes right now. And I want you to imagine a carfipsinator. A carfipsinator. Y'all got it pictured in your mind? No, you don't? All right, there's a reason for that question. Can you imagine something, talk about something, or know anything if it's never happened before, you've never seen it before? Right? You can't, right? It's a completely unknown. Right? All right. So keep that in mind. And Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass, blah, blah, blah. Lord comes down, verse 9. And the Lord said, where's Abel, thy brother? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, what hast thou done? The voice of your brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. All right, now, that's a whole nother message in itself. I've preached it. You can go online. The blood has a voice. This is not the first place in the Bible where it talks about blood crying out from the ground. Jesus' blood has a voice too. Anyways. Meaning, like, there's so many spiritual things that you, again, you just read this over and, no, there's a lot of depth and there's a lot of meaning to it. And if you need to ask, like, why? So, even to the point where blood that's spilled on the ground, it talks about the ground and the earth, and I mean, it knows it. The universe was made to be in harmony. The rocks, the trees, the insect, they all have a purpose and they all cooperate to make this thing we call the universe. And the one gives up its life for the other, and life goes on, and it goes back into the ground and turns into soil and everything, and it's all part of this thing. And even the rocks and the trees and everything know when something's out of order. They just know it. And when you get to heaven and the veil is removed from off your eyes, and trees and animals and everything take on a different dimension, a whole different dimension that is completely unrelatable to us because we only live in, what is it, 3 dimensions? There's whole other dimensions. There's dimensions where smells have color and where sound has smell. And where things bend and don't die. How does grass get walked on? And if in heaven, in this realm of absolute peace, and there's no death. I mean, no death. And there's absolute peace. How do, right now there's no fuel without death. A tree has to die, something has died, it turns into fossilized coal, or you have to cut down a tree, the tree has to die, and you burn it for wood, and that becomes your heat and everything. But in a millennial of peace, where there is no death, how do you sustain yourself? It's another dimension. It's another dimension. And anyways, so even when you're reading the Bible, you're just on the edge of another dimension. Okay? You're just on the edge, and if you think you're going to understand it through your humanity, you're really not. The deep things of God are hidden. And he says that. Listen, there's a reason why gold and diamonds and everything are hidden. I say this, if gold grew like grass, you'd mow it and you'd burn it. You'd mow it up, bag it up, throw it in the trash. But it's not. It's rare. It's hidden. You have to hunt for it. That's why it has value. Not because it's gold and it's shiny. It's because of the extreme measures you have to go to find it. And the fact that there's less of it. And that's how truth is. Listen, information, facts, Google, that's easy. That's easy. They're out there. Information doesn't mean information is truth. You got to go 5 questions deep. You all know that drugs aren't the problem. Right? Drugs aren't the problem. And can I even say this? What you think is the problem, that probably ain't the problem either. When you just start looking to say, what is the problem? You're not going to get it on the first look. You're not going to get it on the first look. Or you could say, well, I was molested, I was touched, I was traumatized when I was a kid. Well, let me tell you this. There's other people that have been traumatized, and I could give you, and as bad as maybe your trauma was, I could show you people who were traumatized in worse ways that don't have the issue that you have. So it might have been how not even the trauma being the problem. It might be how you responded or how you categorized or what you thought about the trauma. And then you have to face that. And then you have to go through a whole process of, well, I've always assumed that that was the right way to deal with trauma. And how do I know that you've assumed that that's the right way to deal with trauma? Because that's how you deal with it, because you don't wake up in the morning saying, I'm going to make a bunch of stupid mistakes. You just do it subconsciously because you think it's the right way. And you keep doing it. Because you're okay with it. Because it's comfortable or you think it's right. So now you got to unwind this thing and go back and ask a fourth question, a fifth question. Well, what is the right way? How should I handle it? Is there a healthy way? Can I recover? Because the way I've been doing it for 5 or 10 years, it isn't right. But sometimes you don't know that until you go 2 years into it. It's like gold. You might look for 2 or 3 years before you find it. But God hid the diamonds and the gold. There's Proverbs that says wisdom is just like that. It says that men, this is a paraphrased version, in Proverbs, one of the things, it says, men will take their life into the dangerous, and they'll swing from ropes into caves. This is actually a Proverbs. Y'all read Proverbs, and it says, to try to find these rubies, these hidden riches and gems. And he says, wisdom is far greater than this. But how many are going to an extreme measure to rappel into a dark cave to try to find the hidden gems? Most of you stand on the edge and go, whatever, I don't need it. I don't need wisdom. I don't need truth. If I have to go to all that, and so it eludes you. I just say all that to say, Doug, will you give me a rag? I say all that just to say, just in general, everything is 5 questions deep. All right, so let's read Cain and Abel. For one thing, why would he feel so comfortable just talking to God? He wasn't even afraid, because that was his normal. That was his. Even though he wasn't in the Garden of Eden, that was normal for him. He grew up talking to God. What hast thou done? Their brothers. Now thou art cursed from the earth, which thou hast opened her mouth to receive your brother's blood. It shall not yield to you her strength. So this is his punishment for killing his brother. A fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be on the earth. And Cain said unto the Lord. Now catch this. He's having a conversation with God. He's negotiating with God about his punishment. All right? And you've heard this story, but you didn't get this wisdom that I'm about to share with you. Which sometimes when you read the Bible, you got to think. All right? So Cain is about to respond to God about his punishment. My punishment is too great for me to bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth. What's the next line? And from your face. Oh. Why was his punishment so? Why did he think his punishment was great? Because he had to till the ground and he had to go live in a desert place and he had to this, that. No. He was like, here's the thing. Mom and Dad were put out of the garden and we just moved like right next door as close as we could. And you still come and you talk to us and you talk to Mom and Dad and you talk to us and everything like that. But what's so hard for him to bear is not the fact that now is that he has to move away from this place where God visits Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel and all their kids. Now, there was a time in the Bible when they were bringing the Ark of the Covenant. Now, the Ark of the Covenant was, if you ever watched Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Ark of the Covenant was this box that held what? The presence of God, right? And when they were bringing it in, they was like, well, let's put it on an ox cart, and so they put it on this ox cart, and the priests are walking alongside, and they hit a bump in the road, and the one priest reaches out to make sure the ark doesn't bounce off the cart, and he just gets struck by lightning or whatever. He dies on the spot. Okay? So they're out here on Market Street bringing the Ark of the Covenant down the road. It hits a bump in the road right there, and they're like, oh, we got to stop or we're all going to die. We need to figure out a better way. Okay? So they stopped right here in front of the house of James. So they take the Ark of the Covenant and they go and they put it in the house of James. Now, what happens over the next few years while they're like the Ark of the Covenant's in the house of James, and everything at the house of James just becomes beautiful and wonderful. And the carrots start becoming big, and the tomatoes are bigger than everybody else. Everybody's got a garden, but over here at the house of James, it's like, my daggone. Like they put they put Miracle-Gro on it. It's miracles. It's the one who does miracles. God's presence is there. And where God's presence is, there's favor, there's blessing, there's just this power and this presence of goodness and greatness. Awesomeness, majesty, right? So, Cain says to God, it's too much for me to bear, for me to have to leave your face. Some of you don't value the presence of God. Some of you be complaining about, what do you mean? The ground's going to be hard. I won't be able to get my favorite food. That's not what he was worried about. He knew everything. Everything that was good came from the fact that, and I use this term from anybody watch Supernatural, Sam and Dean Winchester? Or some of those other shows, and you got, I call them the originals. Again, we're talking about lifespan. I haven't lost my place in this. Adam and Eve were the originals. they had firsthand experience with God like nobody else. And then Cain and Abel grew up in that atmosphere. Listen, if you have godly parents and you grow up in like that, is invaluable. Invaluable. Because you got stuff. I learned stuff and got stuff by the time I was 7 years old that there'll be Christians that'll never get it. They'll live to be 60. I'm not saying they can't, but I'm just saying because people don't go 5 questions deep, because they don't have a heritage, they don't have a routine, they don't have a discipline, they don't have exercise. Why? Because it was never put in them to have it, and so they don't have it. And if you don't have it, it's very hard to get. But I had some stuff that was put in me. And listen, I'm not bragging about me. What Cain and Abel and all of them had, it was just that they just happened to be born to Adam and Eve. It wasn't them. There's stuff money can't buy, y'all. And when you start to learn to seek after that and value that, well, you'll be unstoppable. Unstoppable. Which goes even back to your question about, was that just these men? I'll tell you why I'm healthy. I've never had health insurance. Never. I'm almost 60. I'll probably, I guess I'll get it when I'm 65 or whatever. But see, when you understand what your purpose is, and you understand you have a destiny, and you really believe the Bible, but here's the thing about, you can't pick and choose what parts of the Bible you want to believe. Just like health. You can't pick and choose I like this part of health. I like the part of health where I'm strong and I can move quick and I can play with my kids, but I don't like the part of health that requires me to refrain from eating poorly. Refrain from drinking things I shouldn't drink and inhaling carcinogens and things like that. But I do love taking long hikes and being healthy and feeling strong, and I like to be able to bend over and put my socks on in the morning. Whoa. But I'm saying, some of us, we do the Bible the same way, spiritual stuff. Like, oh, yeah, I like that part about not having consequences, and grace and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. I like that part about him being my shepherd, I shall not want. No, you don't. Let me just tell you. No, you don't. You like the I shall not want part. You don't like the shepherd part. Because the shepherd means you do what he says. You go where he says. Oh, he's going to take me through the valley of the shadow of death? I don't want to do that. I like the green pastures. Sorry, the valley of the shadow of death is part of the journey too. Sitting down in the presence of I like the banquet. He prepares the banquet before me. Well, what? Oh, in the presence of your enemy. You don't get to choose this stuff. And the person who's powerful and the person who flows in it understands that I want it all, because it all has value. And actually the thing, listen, can I tell you, the thing that we all try to avoid is the stuff that has the most value. If you got to climb into a cave and rappel from a rope and go into a dark place, guess what? You're going to come up, you're going to be the one coming up with the rubies and the diamonds. Why? Because you were willing to sweat, you were willing to put yourself in a dangerous, precarious situation, you were willing to do the uncomfortable thing that no one else was willing to do. But see, when you develop a whole mindset of this, that purpose and destiny eludes the comfortable. Purpose and destiny are not found in comfort. They're found in facing giants. They're found in doing the thing that no one else wants to do. Or you could say, and people stand back, oh, he was destined for that. Well, you could maybe say that. Or maybe he was just the one in 10,000 that was willing. And because God's looking for someone who's willing, he's like, you're all I got. Everybody else wussed out. Nobody else understood the whole dynamic of it. Nobody else understood that there's a greater reward for the person who will put themselves on the line. There's a greater reward for the person who will refrain in the moment, in the days of leisure, in the days of comfort, in the days when you can have something. Does it mean that you should take it? No, you shouldn't. See, when you start living your life from this standpoint, most people are like, oh, it's not a sin. Oh, it's not wrong. Oh, I'm not. No, not today. Maybe not today. But see, if you understand that smoking cuts 7 years off your life, then you're robbing God of 7 years. And you're saying there's about 7 years of your destiny that you just don't give a flying flip about. You ain't taking it serious. So he's like, well, if you don't take that serious, then why should I take my end of the deal serious? I mean, this is reciprocating. Do you understand? Everything flows together. Everything in the universe is to be in harmony, and it recognizes the earth recognizes. And I use this term, and it might sound like I'm new agey or I'm talking. No, I'm just telling you it's how God, I'll still refer to God, but I'll just tell you the universe, the rocks, the trees, the bosses, which all authority has been given by God, things that were built in previous generations, they were there. They're here for a purpose. And they want to be used to their maximum purpose. And they avoid, just like you would avoid, they avoid dysfunction. They avoid abuse. They're like, who's going to take care of... Listen, the universe, the rocks, the trees, even if you want to say buildings and things like that, like if they're looking for who's going to nurture, who's going to care, and you don't get to nurturing and caring without counting the cost. Who's going to be faithful? I'm just saying, this is how God looks at everything. We don't even understand. We say God. Do you even know what that means? God who pre-existed? I'll just bring God into 1 billion years. Not a trillion, not a quadzillion, quintuplet, trillion, bazillion. Because that's what eternity is. Let's just bring him into 1 billion years. He ain't about tomorrow. He exists on a scale of 1 billion. We don't comprehend even what a billion is. Do you understand? You know, you have no concept of even $1 billion. I don't. Do you understand? If you took, I think they said if you took $1 million and you stacked dollar bills, 1 million, it would be as tall as the Washington Monument. Okay? Okay. I can conceptualize that. If you had 1 billion, it would wrap around the earth. Like, that's how much different a billion is from 1 million. So, and then you have to think God is on a whole nother scale from that. So even when you read the Bible, he does things generationally. He starts with Adam and Eve, but he already has the second Adam in mind. He's already got Jesus in mind. When he started it, he had Jesus in mind. He had me in mind. You understand? I'm in relationship with the eternal. I'll talk this way. My destiny is tied to billions of years of forethought and planning. And if God has a destiny for me, then he has to resource it. I mean, some of these concepts, I'm just telling you, if you just took a week or two and you meditated and you went deep, and people would call you crazy, but you could never exhaust just that one thought, that one concept of how you're connected in space and time generationally, and that God knew that you would be here at this point, and he has a purpose for you to do, and your decisions matter. Let me say it this way. Your decisions can matter. Your decisions can matter, or they could just not matter. They could not matter at all. And you know what? Most people live their life in a way, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if 7 years of your life is gone. That's what you think. So if it doesn't matter, I guess it doesn't matter, does it? If it doesn't matter to you, and you don't want to give it up, then why should it matter to the universe? And you don't think that there's You don't think in the scheme of billions and billions of years and the way this thing's been all playing out that what, you're special? You're somehow, you're going to be the anomaly that changes everything? No, you either get with the program and you start living like it matters, or it just don't matter. It just cuts you out. Can I just tell you? The universe will cut you out like you don't matter. And you'll just become fertilizer and dust and whatever. You were formed from the dust, and you'll go back to the dust, and it just won't matter. Or you can start tapping into things, going deep, and you can matter. And this is what I believe about my life. And if I was to drop dead tomorrow, I would tell you, you can mock me. Not going to matter to me at that point. But this is how I live. Is that if my life does not matter enough for me to be on this earth, then my faith says, if I really believe this in this thing called God and faith and heaven, then I should be okay with dying tomorrow. Just, and I am. Like, because either I believe that it's better to be with God in heaven than to be on this earth. But I see people whose lives really don't matter who are trying to cling to life on earth. They live some of the most wretched lives, have nothing to show for the years that they've already walked the earth, and yet they're get a little this or that. I'm going to go to the doctor. I'm going to go to this, and they're trying to preserve their life. Why are you trying to preserve your life? Were you going to go out and do something tomorrow that matters? Because personally, I don't want to be around at 100 years of age if I'm shitting my pants. But I mean, I'm just saying, I know a lot of people that are like, on one hand, they're doing all kind of stuff that just destroys their life and the life they live. And the next generation, they're not living for the next generation. They're not leaving anything behind. They're not building anything, constructing anything. They're not thinking about life beyond them. They haven't tapped into the eternal. Because I'm an eternal being. And I believe, I'm not going up to heaven to float, eat Milky Ways and have some angel fan me and drop big grapes in my mouth. I just want a mansion. I was thinking the other day, and I was thinking, I talked to somebody and it's like, and it just shows how different people are and where we come from different places and why we want what we want. But it also shows how how ignorant we are we don't understand that God and the kingdom and everything like that. Again, this is like on a different glorious level. And we're so trying to find comfort in this humanity. And it's like, you should be literally storing up treasures in heaven. And if you had to if you had to give your left arm to gain something eternal, or if you had to pluck your eye out, I think I'm quoting the Bible right now, and walk on this earth blind and lame to actually have something in heaven, you should do it. You should take that trade and do it every chance you get. But I don't see anybody volunteering for that. Because when it comes right down to it, we don't believe that the stuff in heaven is that great. Are you living for eternity? See, because when you start living for eternity, you can turn your back on everything that is earthly. Walking away from earthly stuff it's easy. Who gives a rip? Why? Because you really believe, I'm just telling you, I really believe that it's actually all going to burn. I actually believe that this body is just a vessel of stinky, rotting carcass. That's all it is. It's a tool. It's an instrument. This is nothing but a bridge that I should be walking on, using to get to the other side and to make something eternal happen here on earth. It just happens to be that this is my connection to earth. But I'm an eternal being. I'm a spiritual being. I mean, you got to think, and I'll put this in a frame. Like, if you really believe this, like that you are a spirit being, just imagine that you're like this alien being, this alien life form, and the only way that you could live on this new planet that we discovered, hey, let's call it Earth. Ooh, we found this new planet called Earth. And we're all spiritual beings in this spaceship. And guess what? How are we gonna live on Earth? Well, you better put on this Earth suit. But then what are you going to do when you put on this Earth suit? Are you going to adapt everything about this earth, or are you going to understand that no, you're a transcendent being? That earth is nothing but an exploration or even a chance to prove yourself for the real world. Or that there's a mission. Like, if you got sent to earth and they put you in this earth suit, it's because you have a mission. You're actually supposed to accomplish something. And it's not being fat and sassy. And then all your thinking revolves around, does it please my commander? Am I doing what the commander and my heavenly Father wants for me and sent me here for? I move like a person while I'm down here. I'm got this earth suit on, but I move like I'm a person on a mission. And I make decisions based on the fact that I have a predestined purpose and assignment. I'm here on assignment. And this is just temporary. This is like 70 years. I wear this earth suit. I don't know. Is that how you believe? Recently been watching Halo. I've been binge watching. And they brought up a concept of these things are deep. And you have to think like it. Otherwise, purpose and destiny will elude you. You'll never tap into purpose and destiny. Just the word destiny itself means that there's a sovereign, meaning a king of kings. There's a mastermind that has predestined, and that it's part of a master plan, and that when you get into this slipstream, you get into this flow of destiny, then yeah, a 12-year-old boy can step out and fight a Goliath. And know the outcome. Destiny. And you start living for destiny. But if we're being honest, we're living for like the next 5 minutes. We're trying to figure out how we can be comfortable 5 minutes from now. Or maybe we've expanded our thinking to go so far as the weekend. Wow. That's some real destiny thinking right there. What am I having for lunch? So we were reading about Cain and Abel. He said, this is too much for me to bear. When you tillest the ground, it won't yield its strength. You'll be a fugitive and a vagabond. And Cain said unto the Lord, my punishment is too great. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, from this geographic location, which is the best geographic location there is. And I can tell you why. It's because that's where God visited. That's where God's anointing was and His presence was. Why? Because we already know He's coming and talking to Cain and Abel. All right. And now you're going to send me away. And Cain said unto the Lord, my presence is too great. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face. And from thy face shall I be hid. And I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth. He's repeating his punishment. And catch this. And it shall come to pass. What's it say? Oh. That anybody who comes across me will want to murder me. If he had committed the first murder, why would he be afraid of being murdered? Why would he be afraid of going out amongst the people and being murdered. There was never any murder, supposedly. Supposedly he committed the first murder. No, he didn't. There was all kind of wild crap going on. And can I tell you something else? Why? Because humanity is sinful and we're jealous. And Cain and Abel and Cain and Abel's kids and Adam and Eve's kids, they had the best of everything. They're the ones that talk to God, for God still visits them. They act like they're all this and that. They're the originals. Oh, now we have a chance to kill an original? They think they're so much better than us. Huh? You got some of your own kinfolk that think that? You think that there's not some family jealousy goes on? Listen, all you got to do is wait for grandma and grandpa to die, and if they have more than $1,000, you watch how the kids act. You better hope it not be more than 10,000. Jealousy, and they got this, and I can have that, and we'll just take over their land. His fear was that he would be murdered. Where do you think he came up with the idea of murdering his brother? Because he wasn't the first one. He was the first recorded one in the Bible that was recorded, because God don't record things in the lives of people that don't matter. You come on this earth, you go away from this earth, and it don't matter. You're nothing of note. So why should we write about it? There was a whole lot of people of not note. And what they were doing wasn't even worth discussing. They weren't going to ever be used as an analogy. They didn't have good seed in them. They didn't come from good lineage. They came from nothing. They'll die from nothing, and it'll be of no note. Yeah. Yeah.
Let me ask you this question.
Hold on 1 second. But you understand, you got to read the Bible and ask questions. How can someone be afraid of something they've never experienced? Every fear is learned fear. You're not born. There's 2 fears that you're born with, but even those you learn. There's only 2 fears that you're born with. The fear of loud noises and falling. And that's because you get those in the womb. You can a real loud noise in the womb, a baby, and he'll jump and he'll kick in the womb. And he can feel if his mother's like falling. And so when we come out the womb, we have those 2 fears. But the fear of murder, the fear of dogs, the fear of snakes, the fear of water, the fear of speaking in public, all of those fears, those are learned fears. Why can someone not be afraid to speak in public and somebody else is just gripped with panic? Why? It's because someone had a good experience. They didn't learn not to fear. Whenever they got up and spoke, they were the center of attention. Man, you're so awesome, isn't that cute? And they just, they love the attention. because they got praised. And somebody else got slapped, smacked, and told you're ignorant and you're stupid. No. And that was your experience, and so you learned to fear stepping back into a similar moment. My wife got bit by a German Shepherd. She's afraid of big dogs. She had a bad experience, a learned fear. Okay? Learn. But guess what? It doesn't have to be that way. You picked it up along the way. Okay? So we learn these things. He had a learned fear of murder. And God said, "No, I'm gonna mark you, so everybody knows not to mess with you." Okay? So, yeah.
The devil could have been telling him that, in his own mind that he was going to get killed.
No. No.
The first thought was that Satan came and told his mom not to eat the apple.
Mm-hmm.
She was talking. She had some conversation with him.
Yeah.
That's what happened when he killed his brother.
No. I think he was jealous, and I think he had sin in him, and he responded. And again, he wasn't the first. He said, "They." Now, anybody who comes across me, he did not want to go out into the world where people were away from the Creator. Because generationally, what one permits, the next one does in excess, and the next one does in excess, and the next one does in excess, and you get further and further away from God. So the further you venture out, and again, these are principles. The further you get away, the more you're away and you're in sin, and you're not attached to the life force, and you're not attached to goodness, and you're not attached to holiness, and you're not attached. And so this is why we get on you about little compromises, because it's not a little compromise. Because if you compromise here, and then you compromise there, and then you pass that on to the next person, this is what I tell my leaders. I'm like, I don't want you to do it the easier way. I want you to do it the exact way. Not because the easier way is wrong. Hear what I'm about to tell you. I'm teaching my staff this. Not because the easier way is wrong, it's because you will cut a corner. And if you cut a corner, it ain't about you cutting the corner. It's about the next guy cutting the corner more from what you cut. Because that's what we do. And because around here, everybody's in training. So if I send you out on the truck and you don't use a ground guide, and it's okay for you because you're sharp and you're keen and you're responsible, then the next person is going to think, oh, I don't need a ground guide. Then the third person is going to go, what's a ground guide? I never even heard of it. What's the purpose? And that's where we are in the world. There used to be parents that taught people about morality, and then it was like, oh, mom and dad, they're kind of squares, they're fuddy-duddies, whatever. We'll do it this way. Okay, so you take it down a notch. You cut a corner. Great. Now you wonder why your grandchildren are just little hellions and they're getting locked up. And then you wonder why your great-grandchildren don't even know who Moses is, don't know anything in the Bible, couldn't tell you what Easter represents. They think it's the Easter bunny. Why? Because you decided one day, it's not important for us to go to church as a family. See, but when you understand that you have a destiny and you have a purpose and you have an assignment, then you try to live it to the T. You don't live it to be comfortable in this earth suit. The things that I'm doing aren't about today. If it's about today, I've already lost. I'm already 4 steps behind this thing. The world is eating my lunch if I'm trying to figure out today. I'm toast. No. So my health is connected to my purpose and my destiny. And I can't have faith in a God that's not big enough. Listen, I need to get a bigger God if my God's not able to keep me alive to do my assignment. And so if I get killed in a car wreck or I die from cancer, let me just tell you, there's only about 3 things that happen there. Okay? And it's this. Either I was warned, because I know I have a relationship with my God, and I was warned to change something in my life, and I didn't listen. A second thing that could be is that in the future, if I was allowed to remain on the earth, I would do something that would bring a reproach on my Savior, my King, and my God. And so, you know what? Let's take him off the earth while he's in a good space before he screws things up worse. I don't mind saying that. Because this is how much I believe it. Or I've fulfilled everything that God has for me to do. And again, there's no more need for me to be here. Now, if God knows that you're not going to fulfill what you're supposed to do anyways, and you're just always going to be self-seeking, and your life doesn't matter, then guess what? Your life doesn't matter. I don't know. You could, it could just be, whatever. You could get COVID, you could get, whatever, and something take you out. I don't know. But I'm just telling you, I believe, I have faith in my God. My God is a healer. I literally believe that by his stripes I'm healed. The same blood and death and burial and resurrection that raised Christ from the dead, the same Spirit will heal my body. And I believe that I live my life in such a way that I add value to the kingdom of God here on earth. And as long as I add value and I'm walking in a preordained step, you understand, 1,000 will fall at my side and 10,000 at my right hand. It's not going to come near me. It can't. It can't take me out. It can't. Why? Because I'm walking in a destiny. In a destiny. Now, the question you have to ask, are you walking in destiny? Does it matter? Is it really going to matter to the kingdom? Is it going to be such a loss next year? Is the plan of God going to be altered in some way? And is the kingdom of God going to have a void if you weren't around? If you cease to exist. Can I tell you? The universe knows the answer to that. The enemies know the answer to that. Sad thing is, well, I think maybe we know the answer to it too. We don't want to admit it,